Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Memory Card. Last week you heard us talking about Fire Emblem Awakening. We are a level 30 podcast that takes a look at the newest titles while drawing a line back on those classics. I'm your host, Drew. With me, I got my boy, Tom.
I'm supposed to say my name? Tom. Hey, it's Tom.
If you were listening to last week, you would hear us talking about Fire Emblem Awakening in anticipation for, yes, the glorious Fire Emblem cover art that Tom just showed. If you're listening to the podcast, the audio only.
Yeah, that's really good cover art.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know where they pay these people, but I'm just like
probably pay them in their bank account.
The manuals, just all the art. I would love to have more of. I would like to see actual book of pre-drawn stuff. And do you have one?
I do.
Oh, damn. All right, next time I'm up. So last week we talked about Fire Emblem in anticipation for Fortune's Weave, which we're hoping comes out around sometime May, right? We want to really get back into the swing of things when it comes to Fire Emblem, since it's been about 3-4 years since the last game.
That sounds right-ish.
He says that sounds right-ish. So I'll take that as a yes.
Sure.
And today we're going to talk about Fire Emblem Blazing Blades, which of Steel. Thanks, Tom. I love it.
Yep,
Blazing Blades of Steel. One of my favorite games. But this is the first GBA. It's the first Fire Emblem that came out west and did not have a subtitle on it. For whatever reason.
Nope, just called Fire Emblem.
Nintendo likes to mix around our timelines from the west to the east just to screw us all up, right? This was a franchise that was very popular in Japan and took a minute to get to us, sadly. We did not obviously get the first game in the series, but we got a banger when it came to GBA in that this was the first experience of one of the first experiences of a tactical game in our hands. I remember having Super Nintendo's Ogre Battles, which was tactical, but it was a lot different, and I feel like was a lot heavier. This was only heavier to me at the time because of permadeath, which we talked about last week.
Yes, we admitted to being casuals, so if that offends you, suck it.
I'm okay with being casual.
That's it, baby.
Just be nonchalant. And that whole rock, paper, scissor battle system was introduced to us of one weapon being better than the other, one magic being better than the other, and making it a lot harder to manage when it came to a single screen, right? We're going back in the day of carrying it with us and trying to figure out, do I have a sword? Is this better than a lance? Is my unit a little bit stronger than someone else's? One of the biggest issues I remember in battle was that there was always a counterattack. You would attack the enemy, and they would attack you back, and I'd always worry about, is he going to do enough damage to me to defeat my unit? Because if my unit's defeated, I'm restarting that game or that battle.
It did a good job of kind of establishing the rules of its game systems early, and I think that was half the fun, is that, the tactic element of things is great. It's not just turn-based where your characters are in a line and you're selecting attack, defend, magic, item, right, which has kind of been customary in a lot of role-playing games, but I always felt that the series was the tactical element of it that made it unique and special. So having a say on all right, we're in the battlefield, am I going to move this character, sounds like such a no-brainer thing to go, well, yeah, that of course, if you're playing a third-person action game, you move your characters where they're safe, where you can regen, where you can do more damage. But this was also from the original game, 1988, 89. That aspect of things made me personally, at least, a little bit more attached to what I was doing, because it was less menu navigation, even though that is part of it, but also really putting thought into, okay, if I move this character here, I can attack from the forest, and I'll have better defense when they counterattack and hit me. Um, Setting up characters in like two stages where I'm going to move this person over here so that I can then move my healer there, and the order in which you move characters, because you can only move them once. Like, there is a lot of really smart things here that they did, that just very early on in this game, like the tutorial aspect of things in the first hour or so, for veteran players, probably a bit much, but as the quote unquote first game in the series here in the West, like it laid its groundwork early and then said, okay, cool, we're going to have fun with this and challenge you along the way. So it did a lot of really cool things out the gate.
Yeah, a lot of games before the GBA, I feel like, were the beginning of platforming games and run and gun, and like you're forgiven for rushing in, whereas this game really taught you patience and consequences. You really had to decide on, where am I moving it? Is this the right action? What will be the consequence? And being punished for it. So it was like we were used to be playing original Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and like games where you'd have to jump on a single block. Well, this is more like, if I do this, what are the repercussions? And it really did punish you. I feel like this is like the intro to a tactical Souls-like game, whereas if you played Final Fantasy Tactics, that was much more lenient and a little bit easier to navigate all of that.
Yeah, so one of my first experiences with this game is, and I don't remember a lot of super specific details because I was, I guess, much younger at the time. I don't know how I came into possession of this game at all, but I had a Game Boy Advance and I had Fire Emblem, and I was like, I don't know what this is about, and this is, either very early internet or like not as consumed as we are with it now, to where I had heard about this or even knew what the game was. I just threw the cartridge in and said, okay, I'll just play this. And, the opening like cutscenes and dialogue and stuff, I found very charming and interesting. And then they kind of throw you to combat. And as they're teaching you the methods, I was like, oh, okay, like this is what this game is about. That's really cool. And it became one of those games that I truly felt I didn't hear anyone talking about. I didn't have any friends that played it. If I asked them, have you heard of this game called Fire Emblem? People were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, how am I the only person that knows how good this game is? And so I really like dug into it. It became one of those things where I'd be like, all right, I'm going to bed for the night, and would go with my Game Boy Advance SP and like play under the cover of darkness, like a couple battles until it's like, okay, I should really go to sleep. But I remember there was a point in the game where like a battle had ended. I had lost a character. I didn't think much of it. Maybe because I didn't pay attention to some of the tutorial stuff. They do tell you, like, if a character dies on the battlefield, they're gone for good. I may have interpreted that to mean they're gone from the battle for good. And so, the battle was done, and I'm like, cool, and I saved the game, and I turn it off, and the next day I was like, wait a minute, where is that character? And they weren't available to choose, and I was like, oh. Like, that moment that set in where I was like, oh, no. And I couldn't do anything about it at that point. It wasn't like I can, save scum or restart, and I was like, oh, I'm without this person now. And that sucks because you get the characters chat and they engage with one another, and it's really interesting and they're very well written. But you also kind of develop strategies for how you use them as well. And sometimes they carry over to another character. But like I was like mourning for a moment when I was like, all right, well, I guess they're dead forever. This sucks. And I'll press on. That was a like kind of a cool moment in retrospect for like experiencing that 20 some years ago.
I could just see like a parent coming into their child's bedroom and there's a light under the blanket and you're sobbing and your parents like, what's wrong? And you're like, nothing.
Lynn died. She's not coming back.
Close the DS, the light turns off. You just keep sobbing.
That might have happened.
I will say that I am 100% on board with what you're saying, because like I tell people that if I'm dreaming about a game, like, it's good because you want to keep playing it. And like Fire Emblems and tactical games, like, for whatever reason, I always dive into the realm of that universe, that like medieval European battling, and like the music and the maps and the characters really get you engaged. Like there's a story, you get attached to them. Lynn dies, and you're like, I like screwed up. Do I take the consequence of continuing on with that without that powerful character, or do I restart and try to get back into where I was?
It depends how noble.
Yeah.
If it was a boss battle, I'd be like, up, Lynn, your sacrifice, thank you so much. If it was like a side mission, I'm like, restart. I'm not losing you to some bandit because I got cocky.
Although there was the end game, my friend Steven was telling me that the pirate had like a 90% crit chance would just one shot anyone, and he was like so furious about it that he just would like rage quit from the game, because he was like, there's an arena, and if you just get this one pirate character, you're just fucked, for lack of a better term.
Yes. Notoriously, Fire Emblem has a difficulty setting called Lunatic Mode, which is basically the hardest setting in any video game ever. Like, you have to play it perfectly in order to even stand a chance. Like, it's comically difficult if you just kind of go, yeah, it can't be that bad. No, you will be done very quickly.
I would never be able to do lunatic mode. I would be raging so hard.
Yeah, you have a life too, so it's
okay. So speaking of having a life, this is my one of my questions that I'm going to pose to you. I don't know if I have many more, but I want you to think about you've been playing Fire Emblem Awakening again, decade and a half after it came out. You touched base a little bit on the Fire Emblem GBA.
Yes, both GBA one's on the Nintendo Switch if you have that. Yeah.
Yeah. And my first experience of it was actually the DS Ambassador program, which came out with 10 GBA games, and one of them was Fire Emblem. So I dived in that way, and then I was hooked, and I had to have like Awakening and whatever other ones I could afford at the time. But the question to pose to you is, what does it feel like playing it as a kid or in college versus now as an adult? Does it still have that wow factor? Does it bring back... It
still has that... I don't... Wow. So, okay. It's a loaded question. My initial reaction to your question was there is absolutely no difference. Right? Like, you kind of go into the game with your own sensibilities, your own smarts, and then you kind of work with the system that you're taught to devise your own strategy, and you apply it to whatever, battle map you're on or whatever enemies you're facing. And it's I don't think it's ever to the point where, like, there are puzzle elements that you have to go, okay, I have to figure out how to do this before I can do this. But there are smarter ways to do things. So it's kind of nice in that there's no wrong way to do it, other than the way that potentially can get everyone but one person killed. You would still be successful. It's just with consequences. So in that regard, I don't think anything's changed. But what I do think has persevered is the hook and concept of the game mechanically is so sound, for me at least, knowing, like, you don't need to sell me on a Fire Emblem game coming out other than saying, hey, a Fire Emblem game is coming out. Like, I know what the backbone of that game is. It doesn't necessarily change super drastically, although we did very lightly mention last slot, how Three Houses kind of did a little bit more on the offside, or on the sidelines than previous games have. But, like, the core of it is just so good that you don't mess with it, and I'm perfectly fine. But what does add the wow factor is finding characters that you can attach yourself to, or you can relate to, or you are endeared by, and especially as the game's evolved, less with this one, but like building up, seeing the conversations between characters take place. Acknowledging that some characters are friendly with one another and others aren't, even though they're on the same team, is kind of a very cool and relatable dynamic as well. And then as the stories got more and more complex, there were moments where I was like, oh shit, okay, like this is bad, or like that aspect of it. They pay really strong attention to the stories, the character arcs, and the translation is done really well too. So in that sense, the wow factor for me is there. I guess as long as the games keep being the games that they've always been, I think this is a series that I will always go. Yeah, there might not be a bad Fire Emblem game or like an amazing Fire Emblem game every time, but I don't think there's a bad Fire Emblem game.
Which I feel like you're contradicting yourself from the first slot, because I was like, they've had a very storied, strong presence, and you're like, ah.
Well, okay, yes, the GameCube one and the Wii one are not great, but I don't think they're not bad in the sense that you're gonna have a different Fire Emblem experience. I just think that there are some aspects, right? I don't think the characters were that great. The games were really ugly to look at. They didn't run super great.
Yeah.
Like the animations were slow. Like there was a lot where I was like, okay, this is kind of a slog. So like, but the core is still good. It just didn't latch on the same way I did with some of the handheld ones. Maybe having the screen like, 4 inches from your face is different than sitting on the couch and playing, the GameCube version, for example.
That's fair. I mean, it was people, right? Like even today, I would rather play certain things in handheld versus console, and I skipped out on Fire Emblem GameCube just because I don't know why, but I just didn't have the interest as much as I loved the GBA. Well, like I said, I guess I got into it after the fact when the DS came out.
It was a little bit easier to go back in the DS generation to the Game Boy Advance games because that hardware played Game Boy Advance games.
I had the slot.
Whereas the GameCube game is, I think, still notoriously really difficult to find in the retro market for that. There's just not a lot of copies of it. I regret selling mine forever ago, but it also could have been accessibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah, whereas but even with the Switch, like I've not bought a Switch Fire Emblem, which I'm kind of upset.
Get on that.
I know, like I really wanted to get Three Houses, but at the same time, there are certain aspects of like the whole where you said there are all these different systems of like caring for people and like having these little nuances in menus and all these intricate like systems. Sometimes I don't like that. Like I would rather just get back to the GBA DS version where I can just battle. Like you said, you could skip certain things and just get to where you wanted to.
So then I would recommend Fire Emblem Engage. It's a much shorter game. I think Three Houses on like one route, because you can do 3 different paths, took me like, I don't know, 90 hours or something. It was a lot.
Gosh.
I think.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check. But Engage is very streamlined in that regard. In fact, there's kind of like a hub area that you can do things to like get items or buy equipment. And Drew, there were aspects to that like at the end of the game where I was on the cusp of beating it, it was like, oh, this is like, it was tutorializing things that I was just discovering for the first time, which meant that I had basically ignored them the entire game and they didn't impact anything. So it's not the greatest, in terms of the sideline content. I think it's a little bit more streamlined, but like the tactical aspect is really good and the characters are really good too. So yeah. I would recommend it.
The last question I want to pose to you, is there anything else you want to touch base on with Fire Emblem?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a great game, and it's got a very low barrier of entry outside of the permadeath, that if people had never played a game and wanted to try it, I would still say it's probably more accessible to play this for most Switch owners than it would be Awakening, which as of right now is kind of locked on the 3DS. But don't let that daunt you. I think it's a great intro to the series, and it's the future games in that series only get better. So I think it's pretty accessible in that regard, and folks should try it for sure.
So the last question I have to you is, when you hear the words Fire Emblem, what's the very first image that pops in your head?
Fire hydrant.
Okay.
That was the first thing. I don't know. Fire. Well, no. I mean, obviously. Well, now I have a lot of images in my head because I've been thinking about it too long. Like I know what the emblem looks like and has the slots for the things, but like honestly, I think the first thing that pops in my head is probably just anime characters. There's a lot of There's a lot of unique ones. There's a lot of generic ones, especially in the earlier games where it's just like, oh, cool, it's the blonde-haired anime guy. It's the ripped anime guy. It's the annoying anime girl. It's the goth anime chick. Like, there's a lot of that in there, and that doesn't mean that those characters are bad, but some of them are very trope heavy, and again, not a terrible thing. It does help distinguish a lot of them from one another, but I think in that regard, like if you showed me a picture of a medieval fantasy anime series and just threw a Fire Emblem logo on there, I'd be like, yep, that's sure.
No, I agree with you.
But and I like that art style. Like that, I can never seem to get enough of. And if you like, as a fan of anime and manga, like, cool, I can look at that all day. I don't find that anything wrong with that. So.
Yeah, I feel like when I think of it, you always go back to like the Roy and the Marth, the Lucille, like characters that have been around. Not Lucille. What was her name?
I'm just picturing Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development in a Fire Emblem map. Like her weapon is a banana. That'd be great.
No, what was it? Wasn't there a girl in
Lucina.
Smash Brothers? Lucina. Thank you. Yeah. That was close. Come on, give it to me. That was just.
I know what you meant, but I just...
Rosalina, Lucina, whatever.
Here's $10. Go see Star Wars.
Those characters are like the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, forever I'll have Donnell as the image of Pothead in my head.
There you go.
So as we look forward to Fortune's Weave, we hope that Fortune favors the bold in the people that pre-order it and buy it, because we hope it does well to continue this series. Once again, now that we've moved, attacked, and ended our turns in this slot, I want to thank Tom for being here for both my Fire Emblem episodes.
My pleasure.
So I want to thank you, and again, we'll delete some memory from last month to make room for next month's slots.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.